I'm mosquito killing. There's one buzzing around my ankles. All right, it's lovely to see you all. Welcome. Hope you all had a good day. You're all looking gorgeous, except for Sally, who's hiding because she's been gardening. So Sally, we want to see you in all your gardening glory. Wave your green thumbs at us and all the rest of it. So we're looking forward to that. All right. So Hannah's going to pray because she's the godly one, and that's who you want the prayers from. So
that'd be ridiculous.
Godly prayer.
Anyway, okay. So Lord Jesus, I just invite you into this space, into this time. I just pray that you'd, where we're distracted, where we've got different focuses from just stuff that's gone on today, just calm our minds, remove distractions from us, just bring us to that place of peace and just focusing on you, just that stillness. So we surrender ourselves again to you and just say, come have your way in us. And we long to see you work through each one of us and affect people around us to bring life and hope and joy to those people. So just be with us in this time so that we can learn specifically how to do that in some way. So thank you, Jesus. Amen.
Amen. All right, so what we want to do is give the bulk of our time to thinking about how you build a sense of community and life as you develop a community. So we're going to head in that direction. So but we want to do a bit of review around mission vision and where people are up to. But before we do that, I'm going to tell you a story because we like stories. I have to say, by the way, Doug looks like he's beaming in from,
the
Arctic Circle or something. Are you like up in northern Canada or something?
I'm enjoying the cold weather because it's going to get warm again this weekend. So.
Well, I have to say the Craigs are outside looking very cool and calm in their just t-shirts and, they're obviously tough, hard people. All right. Okay.
You're distracted.
Story. So this group, this missional community is called Jewelry for a Cause. And it came about, there was a lady came up to me and in our church, and she was very quiet. Her husband is really quiet. Like I've known, in the 5 years we knew them, I probably heard him say about 15 words in the whole 5 years. Super, super quiet. And she's kind of quieter, but once you get a going, she talks. And she says, I love jewelry making. And I'm like, right, okay. And she said, I've been thinking about it. I know some other people like jewelry making. And I think we could do a missional community with that. All right, how would that work? And she said, well, what we do is I've got in my basement thousands of colored beads. Haven't I, Daryl? She looks at her husband, he's nodding, goes, oh yeah.
Desperate to get rid of them.
And she says, Daryl would love me to get these beads out of my basement. And look at Daryl and he goes, yes. And so, and she's got all the different color ones, and she goes to car boot sales and buys beads and all the wiring and clips and everything. She's got tons of stuff. And she said, I know a bunch of other people. I think they'd love to come together and make jewelry. And what we would do is, I've been praying about it, and I think what we should do is to say to people, you're going to make two things each time. One of the ones is going to get donated she's got some friends. In fact, it was a partner ministry of the church who are working in a shelter for women who need to escape abusive partners and that sort of stuff. And she said, we will donate one item for there, and then you can take one item home. And I said, you got friends who want to do? She said, yeah, I actually know quite a lot of people. So, and if I'm honest, she is not the person you'd pick from the lineup for someone to lead a group like this. Like she's sweet, but really not super obvious as a leader.
And you weren't sure about the subject either.
No, I have to say it wasn't a topic I'd have come up with by myself, jewelry making. But anyway, in the spirit of empowerment and yes and rather than no but, I said, yes and, that sounds awesome. How can we help you? And off she went. And she managed to gather within about 2 or 3 months, she was gathering like 35, 40 people. And basically what it ended up being was a group of essentially tween-age girls with either their mums, their aunties, or their grannies would come along. and they would make the stuff and have a great time. And she would, the lady who ran it would make, bits of food, and people started to bring cakes and things like that. Had a great old time. And then as we talked it through and it got going, we worked with her a bit on how to do creative worship in that environment. And so for them, what she ended up doing was she did different reflections based around color. And so she'd say, right, we're going to pause. Everyone put your stuff down. What we ought to do is on your tables, everyone find a purple bead. And everyone gets them and they look at them. And then she starts doing a little reflection on purple representing royalty. And she'd read some scripture and talk about how Jesus is the great king of all kings and talk about that. And it's all kind of very intuitive Bible study, and invite people who wanted prayer to get prayer. And of course, around the tables, as people are chatting, she would kind of try and prime the Christians there to be willing to offer prayer, because most of the folks going weren't actually Christians. And it just was this beautiful group. In all my so-called wisdom, I would never have thought of it. And yet here was a segment of culture that was being reached really effectively. And it was a tremendous group. So just those who like detail, their mission vision, this is what she wrote. She said, jewelry for a cause, for ladies and girls to come together in fun and friendship to learn how to make two beautiful and free pieces of jewelry, one to take home and one for a lady or girl at risk, such as those living in a domestic violence shelter. So that's how she advertised it and defined it. So don't you love that Jesus can take someone who wouldn't be a natural leader perhaps, but is able to actually really be used as a leader and to draw people in and to give them obviously a great fun time, build this community which is orientated around Jesus, doing a lovely out focus as well and making a difference. So we want to share that with you, just to encourage you. You're brewing on your dreams and your ideas, and as you listen to others around the church family, around FCC, that even an idea that you would never have thought of, God can use to take you forward. So what we thought we might do is just do perhaps 5 minutes, just a quick recap on mission vision, because we want to just keep hammering this at you so you help get greater clarity as you either think about starting a group or you step into being alongside someone and leading a group as well. So do you want me to do this or do you want to do it?
We could take in turns, don't we?
Very good. All right, we've got a few bullet points for you. So a few tips. First of all,
prayer. Of course, prayer is the foundation of it all. So if you're thinking about who it is you want to reach or where it is you want to reach, just even if it's not crystallized totally in your mind, you don't know exactly what's going to happen, be praying. Be praying about, okay, Lord, where do you want me to go? How do you want me to do this? What do you want me to look? What do you want it to look like? But be praying for these people as well, praying that their hearts would be open, that they would be spiritually hungry. So, prayer is the first point, but it is the point throughout it as we go as well.
Number two, as you think about being on mission, you have freedom to experiment. So you have freedom to experiment, which means, therefore, sometimes that not everything's going to work. So you have freedom to fail as well if you've got freedom to experiment. We would want to propose there are no wrong answers as you think about who am I called to reach, or who am I going to help reach some folks. So in the absence of a word from God, I would just be like, okay, let's pick something and go for it. As an aside, one of the metrics that we like to use just in helping churches think more missionally, so a good measure of success would be, what is the greatest missional risk we have taken recently? What is the greatest missional risk we've taken recently? That would be great for FCC to think about using as a metric, but also for you personally, or for you and your household to use personally. So guys, what's the greatest missional risk we've taken recently? And that's a really fun question, and to try and outdo yourself as the months go by as you think about that one.
The third one is be pragmatic. So what's actually going to work? I mean, again, unless the Lord is specifically saying you need to do this, just think through, okay, well, what does work?
Thank you.
Where am I spending a lot of my time anyway, so it wouldn't be a big jump to invest in a completely new group of people? Or where do I want to spend my time and energies? What would be fun to do? So you don't have to be super, super spiritual about this. You don't have to have, written in the sky as to what you're going to do. Just be pragmatic as to what you think might work.
Number 4 is be shrewd. I love the parable in Luke 16 of the shrewd manager, because sometimes, we try and be more godly than God, and we get a bit over spiritual. And so basically, I think the way I'd apply that for this situation is just be shrewd with your limited resources. You've got limited time, limited energy. You're all busy people, but just kind of take in the absence again of the Lord saying something directly, just pragmatically what makes the most sense for you and your household right now as you seek to be on mission.
Number 5, Alex mentioned it briefly, but pick something good and go for it. So again, unless the Lord is specifically saying do this, just pick something, whatever you think is going to be good, and just go for it. Sometimes we overthink it, and then the enemy gets in and say, well, that's not going to work, and you haven't got time, and da 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 da. So I think just picking something, trying it, we can help coach you as you go. But yes, I think just trying something, and sometimes that means that it might not completely work out, or it's just for a short season, but that's absolutely fine as well. But it's just getting the ball rolling and starting.
Number 6, your mission vision might not be a straight line, by which we mean you might start doing something, but it might evolve into something quite different as time goes by. So don't feel like you're creating the next, the 11th commandment, which is going to last forever. So it can evolve, and that's okay.
Number 7 is remember that people aren't robots. So basically, you can't control their responses. So you may have a great idea. For example, you might be thinking, I'd love to reach my neighborhood. I know there are several other Christian families in the neighborhood. Maybe they can partner with me. And in fact, this happened with us. At first, we shared the idea and they were really excited, and we did 1 or 2 things. And then slowly they for whatever reason, it fizzled out from their point of view. And we're thinking, okay, Lord, it's so sad. So, it's just as though they're not bothered anymore. And it doesn't mean to say that your idea is wrong. It's just you can't control other people, and you need to do what you think is right. And you can't control other people's responses.
Number 8, we've got 2 more. Number 8 is God's will sometimes is a specific target, and sometimes his will is a meadow to play in. So what we mean by that is the specific target is when God says, this is the target I'm showing you, go hit that target. Other times, God says, this is my meadow, play in it. As long as you stay within the fences, play in the meadow, you choose what to do within it. And both of them are totally legitimate. Different people will have different calls at different times. Again, don't judge yourself by others, but just be aware that it can happen both ways.
And number 9 is write it down. So come up with 1 or 2 sentences as to sort of who it is, what it's going to look like. So like Alex read out the Jewelry for a Cause, that mission vision, which I think was 2 sentences. So, and it doesn't mean that it has to stick to that. It can morph and change, but you need to get something on paper that's just going to start your thinking.
All right, and then what we want to do now, and we'll let you guys talk in a minute, just as you're thinking about mission vision, we want to give you just 6 quick fire questions where you assess the culture. Because as you start to identify, so maybe you say I'm reaching my neighborhood or elementary school families near me or this retirement community or whatever it is, 6 quick fire questions to assess the culture and help you then make your strategic next steps. So the first question would be, when and where should you meet to best reach this group of people? When and where should you meet to best reach this group of people? If you're reaching preschoolers, you're probably not going to do very well if the meeting time is 10 p.m. at night, all right? Nor are you going to do very well if it's a very precious home with lots of ornaments at knee level. That's probably not going to be a good plan. So where and when should you meet?
Number 2 is what food would be most appropriate. So, if it's lots of young adults, then pizza is often good. But it's what's going to work with your people, what's going to be easy to do, maybe not too expensive. So, there's lots of variation.
Well, expense may or may not be an issue. It depends on the people, to be honest. So think of that. Number 3, what is good news for these people? What would fullness of life that Jesus brings look like, be for them?
Number 4 is what sort of spirituality already exists in these people's lives that you can build on. So is there any spirituality? Maybe it's another religion. Maybe it's no religion, but they're a bit new agey. Or is it they've had some faith, some church background, but they've just wandered away? So it's just good to know what is the spiritual or the spirituality that's already there that you can build on.
Number 5, if the kingdom was more fully present with these people, what would be different? If the kingdom was more fully present with these people or amongst these people, what would be different? So again, that's the kingdom vision. And it's not that you're necessarily going to get all the way there, but it gives you a sense of, it helps. It's another way to think about that, perhaps their longings or their dreams, or their, what Jesus can do and make a difference.
Number 6, what would best serve this community? So what can they be invited to join you in doing that serves the world? So sometimes it'd be stuff, so it's serving. So is it stuff that's serving these people in particular, or is it stuff that these people join you in that actually serves someone else? But how can you get them involved in serving?
So just to illustrate that, if you're, say, end up reaching a wealthier, say, upper middle class community, often it's hard to find explicit things to serve people unless there's a very obvious need, maybe a frail shut-in or someone who's going through a major illness. But often it's not easy to see that. But what you can do is invite them to join you in serving in a more vulnerable community. And what that does is it's a context where you get to build relationships with that community, with your friends who are joining you in doing that. All right, we'll pause there. Then we're going to move on to talk about in and eating and one anothering. But anyone wants to say anything, add anything, comment, share where you're up to, any new revelations you've had, insight? Everyone's being very quiet. So is everyone good? Anyone got any questions at this point?
I guess the challenge would be to find some common threads that could meet the needs or the interests of a diverse community. We live in one that's, some folks have been here a long time. Some folks have recently moved in, come from different backgrounds. And so I guess that would be the challenge, to see, what is it that we have in common that would be able to draw us together in our particular neighborhood.
Yeah. So it might be stage of life. It might be it might be that there's a particular demographic that you connect with, or you and your household connect with. That's where you got favor. I think another way to look at that is to think who are our people of peace, and what that community look like. Sometimes it's also worth bearing in mind that you might get a focus, just for argument's sake, Doug, say you end up reaching people who've clambered across the top of the Golden Gate Bridge. I mean, absolute lunatics do that, obviously. So say that's your vision, but you might find some people say, I've not done that, but I would love to come and be in a group where people have done that and serve those folks. I'm being a bit flippant, but in other words, don't automatically assume just because someone doesn't look like the demographic you're reaching, they can't be in it, but they might be willing to come serve. Yeah, so it might be you'll reach, say you're reaching empty nesters, but it might be there's a young family who live 2 doors down and they just want to come, and they're just like delighted to have some, what to them look like adoptive grandparents for them and their young kids. So you can get curveballs like that as well.
Sometimes what you can do is, if you do sort of one-off sort of events in terms of serving, so like this time of year, or maybe it would have been better a month ago, is you get everybody together and let's bring stuff to fill backpacks for kids who can't afford backpacks stores or school supplies or whatever, or lesson teachers with them, because teachers always need extra school supplies for their classrooms or something like that, where it's easy just to organise a sort of outdoor party or whatever. You put that together, and then maybe near Christmas time, so it would probably be October, November, you do the shoebox thing. I don't know if you've ever seen that Operation Christmas Child, where you basically get a shoebox and wrap it in paper, but then you fill it with all sorts of toys and candy and, again, crayons and stuff for vulnerable children overseas. So that's quite a fun mission project, and again, all ages can get behind that. So if you come across a few of those sorts of things, that brings the community together just to serve in specific ways.
I was thinking that maybe an initial meeting, you spend some time just trying to get to know the background, the cultural backgrounds of the people and what their interests are and what they're really passionate about or what may be on their bucket list. It seems like that would be, give you some clue as what things in common that we might have. Maybe people like to do potlucks or eat different foods or something. I mean, that could be something that brings folks together.
A good question in that would be to ask people to share their spiritual stories. Tell us your spiritual journey.
Probably not for the first one, but...
No, but it's something which we've done that with people who've not been saved yet. And that's, as you start to form a group, that can be a really fun way of getting to know different people. I think Doug, I would say, pray about it, but pick something and go for it. If you're feeling like the Lord's saying to start something, don't over-stress about getting it perfect, because you can always shift it along the way.
Not to belabor this, but one of the things that FCC has done in the past is done this National Night Out. And because of the COVID-19, that was canceled this year. But I think some people kind of actually look forward to that. And if we could do something, kind of bring that back after things have died down a little bit, that would be one way of getting them together and just finding out how people have dealt with, being at home all this time and, what they're trying to do to get their lives back to a level of normalcy.
Thank you, Doug. It was some good, yeah. I'm glad you're processing and thinking. That's the main thing. All right, shall we move on? Oh, go on, Roger. Sorry.
Alex and Hannah, the two of you have mentioned this on several occasions in terms of what would good news look like to the people that you are reaching. Can you give a couple of specific examples that can illustrate what you're talking about there?
Yeah. I'm going to go. Well, so for instance, good news on, so there's a kind of shallow level and there's a deeper level to that. So, good news, say if you're reaching college kids, good news might be free food. Do you know what I mean? It could be that sort of level. And there's a kind of that sense of doing something jolly and fun, which I think is always attractive. So I think the kind of, if I say a shallower level of good news, what would just be a fun thing? People hear it and they almost like can't help themselves but grin and go, okay, that sounds cool. I'll come to that. So what would be that thing where people just grin and say, oh, yeah, I'd love to come to that. That sounds like a fun idea. But then as you go deeper with them, I think it's good news is starting to help them. So for instance, if say you're I imagine you've got a lot of folks in your community who are, they're prosperous, they've got well-paying jobs, high-powered, but they're probably super busy, stressed out, more money than time in quite a lot of cases. Or they've got all the toys, but kind of like their life is this whirlwind. And so, good news in that situation might be, well, how do I find rest? Or how do I get peace or contentment that's not just dependent upon the latest consumer kind of kick that I've got. So in that environment, it's the good news is like there's a different way to orientate our lives so we don't be trapped by consumerism. So we're starting to model for people different ways of operating. We're starting to walk with them and disciple them in that direction. So obviously the good news for them, we can perhaps see it. It might take them quite a while to get to it, but there's a sense of offering something that's a bit different in terms of how they're prioritizing their life and setting their goals.
I'm just thinking, something that I've often done with young parents or parents who still got kids at home. And, you know, most parents struggle at one time or another just with kids. And particularly in this season where everybody's cooped up together. And so I think it's just somehow, how can you bring the good news to them right then? So it might just be as simple as, you know, I was struggling this and I prayed and I just asked God for help, and he gave me some strategic answers as to how to deal with my child and this particular thing. Or we've got a small group and we come together and we discuss these things. We look at the Bible and that gives us some specific answers as to what we can do with our children, but not exasperating them or whatever. So there's specific things there for parents, but also it could be something like service projects or whatever. And so in one of our neighborhoods, as we were a more prosperous neighborhood, and we went and served it was in sort of a Habitat for Humanity type place, but mingling with some more disadvantaged people. And it was modeling to our neighbours that everybody matters, and everybody's created in the image of God with a purpose. So it's telling that to our people, but together going and telling that to other people as well, that everybody matters, everybody's created with a purpose. And so yeah, that sort of thing.
Thank you. Those were helpful.
All right, let's move on. We're going to talk and interact with you around in dimensions. So remember, we talked about missional communities. The essence of what you do is a mixture of up, in, out. Under up, we talk about creative worship and fresh bread, which is how we engage with the Bible. Under out, we talk about declaring the words of Jesus and demonstrating the works through serving and through being natural, supernatural. And then under in, we talk about eating and one anothering. So we want to focus on eating and one anothering this time. So eating. Okay. I like eating. I hope some of you guys like eating. It's one of my hobbies. I'm quite good at it. One of the things about eating is this. Have you ever thought, where did Jesus do most of his ministry? I think there's two environments Jesus did most of his ministry. Can anyone have a guess as to what those might be? It's not a trick question. Jesus did most of his ministry.
Mealtime.
Meal times, yep,
Right.
and walking, I would say. They were always on the way somewhere. So those are both things that are very natural, very easy for us to do. And so I think if you think about food, it's amazing how much more people will talk over food and drink. So if those of you in the business environment, you think how many deals have been made over a meal, or at the golf course, which is kind of going for a walk, and I think there's this sense of a common need and a common provision coming together in that environment. It's interesting that in the Old Testament, many of the festivals, there's this kind of eating element to it. You could kind of engage in this act of remembrance of these things from their shared history through having a meal together. Should I keep going? Do you want to do those three?
Yeah, so basically, we try and think of, if we have we and a lot of people have 21 meals a week on average. And so we try and, in normal times.
Our sons have about 42 meals a week, they're always eating.
But in normal times, we try and at least 3 of those meals have them with someone else. So we'll try and do some of them with Christians and some of them with non-Christians, even if it's super, super simple. It might just be dessert, or it might actually be coffee rather than a meal. But the point is you're sitting and lingering over something in your hands with other people. And it's interesting, there's some research done, and apparently into kids' GPAs, and apparently the kids' GPAs rose dramatically with those kids who have at least one family meal per day, because I think meals are a time when you discuss so much, kids can ask questions. If you just linger and eat together, so it doesn't count for a TV dinner, but if you're talking to each other, engaging in conversation, it opens up so many horizons and avenues. So we try and encourage people. We try and do it ourselves. And this, in COVID era, you have to get more creative. And so we've been using, and this is why I'm so grateful in California, because we use our backyard. And it might not, sometimes it's food, but sometimes it's just drinks in the evening. That's our habit right now. So we had drinks a couple of nights ago at a neighbour's house.
We've just bought a fire pit, a gas fire pit, so we can do more mission this winter in our backyard.
Yeah.
For that reason.
And so Jesus, he was known as some people accused him of being a drunkard and a glutton, and certainly hanging around with those people. And of course, he was neither. But the point is, he did spend time eating and drinking with people, and
people far from God.
Even those people who are far from God. So obviously with disciples, but people who, so Zacchaeus, or so many other people. So he did so much of his ministry in that way. And I think as we do that, it's just important to ask questions and to be really good at listening. If it's interesting, the people who come around to our house, so many of them are really bad at asking questions. So we try and encourage the people who we talk with and who we train in doing stuff like this to make sure you ask questions and then ask follow-up questions, because you get to find out how people work, what their backgrounds are, what makes them tick, and then it gives you openings and opportunities just to think, okay, Lord, how can I bring the gospel here? How can I, bring you in? So it's asking the questions, and then it's asking Jesus, okay, how can I respond here? What can I do? And how can I share Jesus with them?
All right, I want to give you some practical tips on how actually to do food in a sustainable way in a missional community. So we've given you some principles on eating and food and why it's so important. Obviously, what we've just shared, it works well as you start to build community, as you start to get to know neighbors or people in your place of mission. But I think as you start to do organized missional community, we would encourage you to, as much as possible, to have to do things around meals. Obviously, we'll just put the asterisks in Corona. We'll come back to that in a moment. But I think in normal life, try and do as much as you can around meals for the reasons that we've just been sharing. Now, the way to do it well is you need to think of it as extended family rules. So if you have your big family gathering at Thanksgiving or 4th of July or whatever it is, if you've got a sort of family that does that, what you won't do is just everyone sits around waiting to be served. Instead, what happens is everyone mucks in, and some people are doing the prep, and everyone perhaps if you come from family, everyone brings dishes, everyone cleans up afterwards, people take ownership, they know where to put things in the house and so on. So the way we've always done it with missional communities in our home is we've always made people bring stuff. So everyone contributes. And actually what you find is, even you might think, well, if you're a non-Christian guest, you should let them come. No. People feel much more comfortable, far more comfortable if they can bring something. And so we get everyone to bring something. We don't rescue it. So you tell them about the group we had with,
well, particularly with
young adults.
I mean, it always happens that you get too much bread and nothing much else, or there's something where there's too much of one
mountains
thing
of potatoes,
not enough of another. So there was a classic time with our young adults one time. I don't know if it was pizza and chips or something.
It's chips every time.
Everybody so I provided the one big thing, but then all the young adults brought chips, and
box brownies. They brought, so it was chips and brownies they brought again and again and again, like week after week after week after week after week, nothing else. And we just refused to rescue it. And I would start taking photos of the huge piles of chips and just send it to them. And eventually they got the message, perhaps you should bring something different. But that's part of being extended family. You kind of roll with it. So I think the mindset needs to be, you're not hosting a dinner party. It's not a dinner party.
The whole point is it has to be sustainable, because if you're going to do this firstly on a fairly regular basis, you can't, I mean, it's money, but also it's time. If you're going to massive lengths where the house has got to be spotless and the table's got to be perfect and the food's got to be a bit amazing, I mean, you'll soon grow tired of doing it. But it's less authentic if you're just inviting people in and saying, come as you are, but you've got to accept me as I am. As long as it's not horrendous quality, then it's all good. It's more disarming.
Yeah, we've had plenty of times where, people have been walking in for the start of a missional community, and one of us is in the bathroom cleaning little boy pee off the toilet seat and things like that. I mean, it's kind of very, I think it needs to feel sustainable and down to earth. So we do the essentials, but we don't try and make it absolutely perfect because it's not multipliable. People feel oppressed by that. Does that make sense to people? Yeah. So have fun with it. Don't get overstressed by it. Okay, questions about food and just making it sustainable.
I always tell people when they come over that we're going for the lived-in look.
You're going for the what?
The lived-in look.
The lived-in look. I love it. I love it.
You pay extra for that, Benji. That's high end.
It's just like the jeans with the holes in them. I make those at work all the time.
It's really the difference between somebody who has the gift of hospitality and somebody who has the gift of entertainment. Entertainment is much harder to maintain, versus hospitality that you basically send the message you can drop in anytime.
Right.
It's the way you make people feel. That's the most important thing.
Because at the end of the day, if you just sit around and share a bag of chips, if people feel loved and accepted and welcome, it's actually fine. You know what I mean? People are much, and you want people to relax and, enjoy it. But food does that. So we really want to encourage you, have food at the center of your missional community life. But just, as different people host, you've just got to model it in a way where it feels sustainable and doable. And definitely people muck in and we all clean up and, all that stuff. So kind of be very pragmatic about the food.
You may cover this later, but I can think of ideas of how to do this, but I do not see ideas in this coronavirus thing. I mean, I'm not going to go to eat at somebody's house.
No.
Yeah.
How do we do this during this time?
Yeah.
So what we've done a lot of is, and it depends on the individuals. So sometimes we've literally said, we're going to be out on our front lawn between this time and this time. Come, bring your own drink, bring any snacks, bring your own chair, and then you literally touch nothing of anybody else's. So particularly when coronavirus was at its height, that's what we did. I think certainly our neighbours are a bit more comfortable now, so we're inviting them into the backyard through our back gate, and we will provide the drink. Although sometimes they'll bring their own. I will sometimes provide snacks, but it is something, I don't do chips where you're all going into the same bowl together. So it's sort of individual things that you can take and you're not mixing, as it were.
We've done, so with missional community stuff, we're not doing big gatherings all together. We'll subdivide. We want to do something physically. This has really been since the last month or so. We're starting to, probably a bit longer, but we're doing male and female groups. And so subdividing something smaller. And so we'll do that outdoors somewhere. So I was actually this Sunday and we'd subdivided down a bit and I was just with a few guys and we actually, did I tell you this?
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, we had great.
I was jealous.
We had homemade brownies and ice cream and fudge sauce and it was awesome. So about the ladies got together and they had a packet of shop cookies. So it's like, so we're super pleased about that. But I think it's really about judging the people who are there and what people are comfortable with. And there's going to be a range of responses. But then with the bigger gathering for our missional community, we've been doing that online on Zoom. And what we've substituted in, because obviously you aren't doing food in that environment, but what we do instead is fun. So we do a game every week as part of our virtual gathering when we're doing that.
But actually, one of them was food. We said we want you to bring an item of food or a snack or something with you, and we're going to have a contest of who's got the most fun.
But most of the time we're doing things like scavenger hunts in your house. So someone's got a list and say, okay, the first person to come back here with a tube of toothpaste, boom, off you go. And of course we got kids and everything, and they love it. It's so much fun. Adults do love it, actually. They get very competitive. Or we've done Pictionary, or we've done quizzes, or we've, all that sort of fun. And really that's our substitute for food, because it creates a fun community vibe, and it does break down barriers in a different sort of way. So that's a good substitution in this season. And fun's always good. Anyway.
Is this a new group you've reached, or?
So this is our home. It's probably been going about 2 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking about how I reach people with this coronavirus situation, to start something new. Because I mean, I take a walk and a block and a half away, someone's coming down the street, they're already moving out in the street so that they're, not passing me on the sidewalk, that type of thing. I am saying hello to anybody, even though they've walked down the street, but, how do you get to meet these people that are avoiding you?
So again, we've done quite a bit with our neighbours. I think most of it has been existing relationships, but some of them, so Alex has just started having a drink with the guy next door. We knew that you've been investing in him in a different way. So that's almost a new relationship just with coronavirus. And they'll just get a drink and sit on the front doorstep, and there's a good distance between them, and they each take their own drink. And I'm doing that with a group of actually older ladies on Thursday, and we've all got it's in someone's backyard. We've got our chairs miles apart, so that people feel comfortable. But I think people you can't do it with a perfect stranger. They're probably not going to do it. But someone who you're getting to know, who lives in your neighbourhood, you could say, hey, I'd love, do you want to get a drink sometime? Do you want to come over for coffee or wine or whatever you think is appropriate? Should we sit in our front yard? I'll put a couple of chairs out or whatever. I'd love you to join me. It'd be fun to get to know you. And most people are hungry for community and will do that.
One example that I think of right now is Doug's group that he's getting started around skateboarding. And if this was typical and COVID wasn't an issue, he could take out the barbecues and flip burgers or hot dogs and gather quite a crowd. But if he did that now, he could be seen as a public danger, or somebody's going to come and haul him off, and I don't want that to happen. How can he, in a situation like this, can he leverage the issue around food? Is there a creative way of doing some of that that's safe and socially acceptable?
I think you can do, because I mean, it's almost like with Halloween, we're thinking how to do Halloween in a socially acceptable way. And I think it's having pre-packaged stuff. If you so they don't want you touching it or fingering it. But if you went to, say, Costco and bought a huge box of snacks or whatever, whether you lay them out on a table so people can pick one without touching all of them, or something that's pre-packaged and not going to be fingered, I think is good. Or individual Coke cans or whatever it is. It's pre-packaged stuff that's not being fingered by everybody.
Okay.
Good answer. I agree.
And always have your hand sanitizer on hand too.
Let's talk about one anothering for a couple of minutes, and then you can throw up other eating questions if you get to them. So this is the other phrase that we use to think about the in dimension. And one anothering, just to remind you, is references. It's about that loving each other well. So it references all the one another scriptures that we get in the New Testament. So there's it's like 70 odd of them, but it's, you know, things like be at peace with one another, love one another, be devoted to one another, honor one another, live in harmony with one another, so on, accept one another, serve one another, kiss one another, Hannah.
Darling.
So just got to keep trying. Encourage one another, you know, forgive one another, all that good stuff. So they're the one another ones, and really they're just different scriptural ways of trying to give us a handle on how you build just loving community together. And so for us, as we think about this principle of one anothering one another in our home church, in our missional communities, I think there's two things I want to encourage you to think about. So one is, in the one anothering, how do we do life together, is allowing lots of people to lead things and to be involved. So if you're leading a group, do not do everything. Like, really resist doing everything. Those of you a bit more of a controlling tendency, you're going to have to really work hard and not do that. Because what happens is, if you can step back and allow others to step forward, you'll actually get a much richer one anothering taking place. Because other people, you know, someone might have the ability to share something meaningful, and others might go, oh, I've gone through that, or hey, could I come and help you do this? Or I'd love to come help you, you know, sort this problem out with you, or I want to pray for you, or etc. So I think as we, as leaders, don't always rush in, don't always be the first to speak, as it were, intentionally step back and make room for others to one another. People mature into that, and it really makes a rich community environment.
That's where facilitator in some ways is a better name than a leader, because you're facilitating people. You're there if needed, but actually it's best if other people can get involved and do it.
So that would be the first thing. The second piece around one anothering is, what we have found has worked the best is, say you're you know, the group gets going and maybe there's 15, 20, 25 people. What you want to do is, when you get to the bits where you want to have people share more private thoughts and private feelings, you want to subdivide down into smaller groups. And so whether it's on the actual evening itself, during the gathering, you might say, okay, we've done our Bible bit, and to kind of discuss that, to pray for each other, what we're going to do is get into single sex groups of 3 to 5 people, 3, 4, 5 people, you know, and then, you know, one lot in the living room, someone's in the kitchen, someone's in the dining room, you know, do it like that. And obviously this is post-corona. But what that does is, it, in that smaller subset, you've already had the bigger time, you've had the food, you've kumbaya'd, but now you can get in the smaller groups straight away. People are going for their much more intentional one anothering, and they get to share what's going on, and we get to pray for and encourage each other. The way we've nuanced that in this season for our lot is, we do it like we just described. We'll have particular evenings where we'll just gather in smaller subsets. So like we did that last Sunday. And
often single sex.
Yeah, we'll do single sex, because that generally works better for accountability and so on, and openness. So I think, so the two things I'd say, if you want to build a kind of one anothering environment, is, first of all, as the leader, make room for others to contribute and to speak. And number two, when you get into that more sharing-y bit, subdivide. And you'll find that works like, I shouldn't say like magic, because that's the wrong term, but it works really, really well. And you actually don't need to do that much leading. And honestly, groups will sort it out, and they will really care for each other well in that environment. Any questions about one anothering, that principle, and how that works in practice?
How mature of a group would you have before you could get to that step? I mean, would it be a group that's been meeting for a period of time before you would actually get there, or would you try to do it right off the bat?
I would probably do it right off the bat, unless there was a really good reason not to. If it was perhaps, you know, a group of high school freshmen, they need a bit more direction. But if it's adults, and you know, And again, if they're particularly a vulnerable group community, they might need some help just to do that. But if it's a kind of regular group of adults, now you might pre-position if you had a few other Christians with you, so you kind of pick it out. So you might go, okay, Alex, you want to go? Because some of you go with Alex, some of you go with Hannah, some go with, Benji or whoever, and you would divide it up that way. So you can slightly engineer it, but most people get into it pretty quickly if you explain what they're going to do.
So I like the idea of gathering around food as well. We've done that several times with our men's groups, and invited the guys to bring a dish of their own to share. And we don't limit that to, a specific food group, but what we do is when they get there and they set their food down, we kind of celebrate the food that they have brought. And as we're taking a bite of it or something like that, we tell them, well, tell me a little bit about this. Is this, a cultural dish or?
Yeah.
And so we kind of celebrate them and the food that they have brought. And I think that that's really important because it helps them connect more with the group and really feels a part of that. So we've done that before in our men's groups, and also we've done it with the Scouts. So we belong to a troop here in Fremont that has about 80 Scouts. And when we're in normal times, we have a quarterly meeting, and we have asked the Scouts to bring specifically a cultural dish that is associated with their heritage. And then to have like a sign that shows what type of dish that is and a story behind the dish itself. And I think that's really important because then you really are connecting with the people and they're sharing part of who they are with you. And that's been very successful for us.
I love it. That's really good, Dave. So good.
Dave, I don't recall talking about potato salad and potato chips being a cultural dish at the men's group.
All right. I know some of you are processing, but hopefully most of this is pretty obvious. Hopefully we're not sharing things that are new thoughts to you or new experiences, but which, I'm interpreting that you're just kind of, you're writing notes, but listening and thinking, hopefully you're going, yep, this is good. I can do this. So the kind of in summary for tonight, what we want you to be thinking about is when you start to gather missional community life, and in advance to actually start to gather with neighbors as much as you can, have food or drink as part of it. Obviously we have to kind of nuance it a bit in this particular season, but it really does help lower barriers. And then what you're looking to do is the one anothering, and obviously one-on-one we do one-anothering with people as we start to go from casual to meaningful conversations and hopefully to spiritual conversations. But also we do that in our group life. We seek to invite people into the conversations and for people to feel they can get loved and cared for and encouraged and all the rest of it. And then as the group gets bigger, we seek to subdivide to help facilitate that taking place. All right, I'm going to do one more quick thing and then we'll give you some homework unless there's other questions. So just one more quick subheading which we kind of stick here under which is where should our groups meet and how often should they meet? So hopefully this isn't, I don't think this is a particularly big, well, it's big, but it's not that difficult to sort out. So I would say the answer to both those questions depend upon the people you're reaching. So what would make most sense for the people you're reaching? So as you think about your context, think about the people who are on your heart, where just needs to be the most sensible place for you to meet. Now, again, if we ignore COVID, generally we have found that homes are the best places for people to meet, or backyards or homes, depending on time of the year. They're definitely the easiest because people already got that resource. It's there. You know, particularly if there's a reasonable sized living room or a basement or whatever it is that people have got. Those work really nicely. One thing to say is in the location, again, if we're breaking out of entertainment mode, not everyone has to have a chair. And that might sound a big statement, but you'll find some folks, I don't think I'm being sexist. I think it has to be the lady of the house found is the most difficult generally, which is people are going to sit on the floor, they're going to sit on the stairs, they're going to be on each other's laps, there's going to be 5 people on a sofa and all that sort of stuff. But thing is this, it's like a really good party. People will everyone will pile into the kitchen if it's a really good party and have a lovely, wonderful time in a way that normally you wouldn't think ever do. It's saying, why would you all pile in here? There's a little space, but we're having a great old time because so if the community is good enough, people will come and they'll be perfectly happy to sit on the floor or sit on cushions or whatever, squidging together. So I think you just find a sensible location that works.
Park, cafe.
Yeah, so other examples would be parks. Sometimes a restaurant has a back room you can use. You know, if you are, again, you think of your context. So if you're reaching families whose kids are all on the same soccer team, then you might do stuff obviously down at the soccer field or, you know, Doug at the skateboard park. That's kind of a no-brainer. So think about the location that way. And then how often do you gather? So we would suggest that, well, there's a range. Probably you want to be going for at least once every 2 weeks for that kind of main missional community gathering. Some groups do once a month. The problem with that is it's so infrequent. If someone misses one, they're several months away. That only really works if that's a group of people who otherwise are in and out of each other's lives and homes all the time. But I would suggest most of you at least every other week, if not every week. So it depends on rhythm of life and what people are hungry for and how much they're willing to do. But so probably the average is every 2 weeks we see with groups. But then in between times, we're seeing people, there's subsets, people having meals together, different events, you're texting, you're connecting. So you're building community throughout the week as well.
What about, so right now in the Bay, there's a lot of restaurants that are doing outside dining. We actually sat down for our first one last week, and it was really nice being outside, really great, you know, just eating food that I haven't made. So, I mean, have you ever thought about, I mean, I don't know how many people you could hold, but what do you think about meeting up at like an outdoor restaurant? You know, people just.
Love it. Great idea. Yep. Picnics would be a kind of a different version of that, I suppose. And you could all get takeout and go to the park and eat it.
Oh, that's a great idea.
I mean, sometimes we see men's groups in particular do like pub quiz or beer and brownies or beer and G's, beer and Bible, all that sort of thing. And sometimes they've met at a pub. I mean, literally right behind us, we've got a pub, and then outside, right behind our house in the back parking lot. So yeah, get creative.
Did you say beer and brownies?
I'm going to find the photo. Yeah, no, it was
not my cup of tea, but
it was great. This is so cool.
You know, the beer is okay, but you really have to be careful about the brownies.
Yeah, you do around here. That's for sure. Give me a moment. I've got a picture here which I'll try and pull up. Here we. All right, here we go. Hang on, come back to you guys. Let me just share. So just take me a moment. So can you see that photo on the screen? So this is a church. They call themselves Genesis. This is down in near New Orleans, and they called it Beer and the Bible, and it was in a pub, a bar. Wednesday nights. This was 8:30 p.m. and There we go. Beginning of March, we had the date, tacos and beer. And the phrase was a safe place to ask the big questions of faith, is how they labeled it. And they actually had other posters, because it was classic. They had like, you know, regular wall posters, which was sponsored by, I think, Coors Light, because one of the guys in their church was a regional rep. And the rep got posters printed for them advertising this, and in the corner it's got the beer, you know, sponsored by Coors Light. It was awesome. So it's just super creative. Now, I mean, I know sometimes there's issues with alcohol, and I want to honor that respect. So I'm not saying, but I love the creativity behind it. I suppose that's what I'm trying to think about.
Absolutely.
You know, so find your version of what that creative thing is. But I mean, it's kind of cool. The stories are cool and inspiring, aren't they? Just the kind of creativity that people get up to.
Alex, you ran by this one thing really quickly when you talked about how often, and you said for the missional community itself to meet every other week, and then you threw in between there's gatherings, meals, small groups, and I think for a church that has for years we focused on life groups, small groups, gatherings like that, where we know every week there's a certain rhythm, a certain aspect. We know what that is going to look like. And so when you say every other week we're going to be together as the missional community, every other week there's other things that are happening. How much effort does the missional community's leader have to put into helping form that stuff that happens outside of the missional community gathering?
So yeah, that's a brilliant question, Roger. So I would say it's the balance between organized and organic. And all of us are going to be better at one of those than the other by nature. And so it's recognizing that you want both. So if you're a more organized, structured person, you're going to be great at okay, we're going to do this at this time, this place. But what you're going to have to perhaps be a bit more focused on making happen is the spontaneous or the
less controlling.
Yeah, just like, you know, it's kind of doing relationships in a way, in a kind of. So I think it's a bit like the analogy I sometimes use is if as a married couple you never ever go on a date, you're going to hit problems. But also if the alternatively though, if you only ever talk when you're on a date, you're also going to be in problems. So you need both the organized and the organic to take place to be healthy. And I think the same thing works with missional communities. You want the organized events, but also you want the organic. And the organic is, you know, two people or a couple of couples or a family or two, they're just getting together midweek or just during in between times, and they're meeting up and they go for a walk or they play in the park or they have a meal or whatever it is. And I think that's the stuff that really adds grist to the mill and makes the thing lively. Obviously, a group that's defined by geography will find that easier to do because you're much closer to one another. It's easier to do things and just say, hey, we're getting a few people over Friday night, we're going to grill out, or, you know, whatever, watch the game or have a beer, whatever it is that you do. And that stuff works. And you can pull in neighbors, other people in that way very easily. So, but I think have a mix of organized and organic in how you structure things.
And it's also very easy to invite other people into those more organic environments. Hey, there's some people that we do life together, and we're having a meal, and would you and you know, Marcia like to come over and join us this week?
Exactly. Hannah's going to give you some homework because she loves you all very dearly.
Okay, so we would love you to have a little think about your rhythm of gatherings. I mean, a lot of you aren't at the stage yet where you're going to actually be doing this, but potentially what could you see in the context that you would dearly love to start a missional community, what could you see potentially happening? So, you know, so would the organized thing be every other week? And what would be the organized things? What would be the spontaneous things or the organic things? So what would that look and feel like? So it's in terms of frequency, in terms of what goes on during those times, in terms of, are you splitting down to small groups? So just sort of putting a bit of flesh on the bones of what it could potentially look like. And we're not nailing you down saying, oh, you've said this, you've got to stick to it. But it's just coming up with some specificity of what it could look like.
What you might find helpful to do, and in fact, I would encourage you, if you are close to thinking about, I might have a missional community on the horizon, why don't you do a draft where you get the calendar, the months from now to the end of the year, and pretend like your group has started, is up and running, and map out when you might gather. That might be a helpful exercise for some. Something wrong there. So perhaps map it. That might be helpful just to have a think. And as you start to do that, you start to go, okay, what might work? How does that feel? You know, and so on. So have a play with it. And start to, because what will happen is when you actually get going with your group, it's really helpful to be able to say to people, here's the first 2 or 3 things that we're going to do. You know, okay, we're doing a social on Friday, and because someone goes, oh, I'd love to come, but we're actually out Friday. And you go, okay, that's not a problem, because actually we've got the following Sunday, we're doing this, you know, we're doing this gathering, and then
maybe a service opportunity.
Yeah, we're doing a serve thing the following Thursday or whatever. You know, so you've got a few things down. So just think about, you know, again, would you serve? What rhythm would you like to see that be? If you, and again, you don't know perfectly, but you're just forcing your brain to think. And I think putting on paper can be a really helpful discipline for doing that.
And different things will be more attractive to different people. So some of your non-Christian neighbours might really love the idea of the serving thing, or they might love the idea of just the informal, let's get drinks together. Or sometimes they actually are intrigued by the formal things. So you don't know. So, but it's just worth having different things which potentially could attract different people.
And what would be important for you? So for instance, would you want to be a group where sometimes you have a dedicated prayer evening and you just come together, maybe it's an extra thing, and you just, you worship and pray, and that's all you're going to do. Maybe that would feel important for you. We love to do that. So what would the rhythm of that be? So just start to play with mapping it out. And this won't be what you end up doing in practice because everything shifts, but it would force you to have thought a bit more deeply about it. And that in itself will be a huge win. That will be a massive time saver for you. Does that sound good? If you know you're not going to lead a group in the next run, but you're just here learning, why don't you think of someone you could pair up with to help them with that exercise? There's someone you like the look of, you like the cut of their jib, and you think, hey, I'd love to be in your group when you get one going. Reach out to them and maybe, perhaps even talk about what this might look like together. Back to you, Mr. Roger.
Well, let me thank you, Alex. Thank you, Hannah. Let me add a little bit of specifics on that. And that is, maybe we could rush this homework assignment. It would be wonderful if you were able to read the announcement that we'll send out today. Alex and Hannah are going to be with us live and in person this weekend in Fremont. And so it's going to be great. And on Saturday at 4 o'clock, we're going to gather for those who are interested in either leading a missional community or being involved in one, or want to learn more about missional communities. We'll be gathering at 4 o'clock at the church. We will be socially distancing, or I should say physical distancing. We'll wear masks. We'll do all the appropriate Alameda County guideline kinds of things. We won't be able to gather around food, except we'll have some prepackaged snacks and plenty of liquid refreshments. Probably not, don't be too disappointed, Doug, probably not beer and brownies, but we'll come up with something creative. Because Doug, I'm seeing you smiling, and I saw you laugh at that roadside. So this is going to be exciting. And so if you came and you have thought through what your schedule might look like, it'd be a great opportunity for us to brainstorm some of that, share with that. But it'd be great to have Alex and Hannah there to answer all of our questions, to give us greater examples. And then Alex will have a whiteboard that you can, or an easel that you can draw to your heart's content.
Oh,
and
love language.
yes, and so we'll have that ready for you. So I hope that you all will take advantage of them being with us this weekend. But it was great tonight. Good, good specific things to follow up on. Yeah. So if there's does anybody have any takeaways or last things they would like to say or ask?
This is Melissa. I just wanted to tell you that I spoke to the chaplain at my hospital about maybe starting a group of just people to get together and ask, what's going on in the world? How does this affect your faith? How does this affect you? And I thought maybe, because what you had talked to me about, I thought maybe using the chaplain would be a good place to do it. And because he knows a lot of people, of course, and that way maybe we can, so he was very interested. So we're going to talk again about maybe doing something together.
That's really cool. I love it.
Yeah.
And Melissa, that was a great example of finding a person of peace.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Terrific. Anybody else?
Just on a super practical thing, this weekend, obviously there's going to be other people there, at stuff, but we would particularly like to talk to you guys who've been coming to these things and who are really thinking seriously about this stuff. So kind of barge to the front a bit, and you might have to remind us of names, because we know what you look like on Zoom, but in real life, people always look very different. I'm actually in real life 6'5", and I look like The Rock. So you might not recognize me.
Darling.
So just, be kind to us and remind us of names, but also, but we want to give you particular attention.
Well, I am sorry, I will not be able to meet you two because I am working this weekend, but I know it'll be a great time for you.
Oh yeah.
We'll record it for you, Melissa.
Yes, I know.
And we'll look forward to keeping on dialoguing over Zoom. I mean, it's better than nothing. And it's really exciting to hear the opportunities you're getting. So it's really encouraging.
It is encouraging.
Well, okay, this has been great. I'm going to, because of Ken Harden's incredible insight about chips and potato salad in terms of men's ministry. Ken, would you unmute yourself and close us in prayer?
Sure.
Thank you.
Carol's laughing on the couch over here.
As well she should.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for this evening and for the leadership of Alex and Hannah and Roger, and just the things that we're learning about how to reach out to others. Just pray that you help us to think about things and think about people specifically, and to pray about those in ways that we can reach people for your kingdom. Again, we thank you for this time tonight, for the people that have joined and listened in, and hopefully we can all take this, the homework, and work on it, and put this into action. Just roll with it, as they said. So thank you for this time, and again for this evening, Jesus. And we ask that you guide us this week. In your name, amen.
Amen.
Amen. I was thinking about one last thing that Alex had said. When did Jesus do most of his ministry? And he did it around meals, and he did it on the road. He was always going someplace. And I couldn't help but think back to youth ministry days, how often, so much ministry that happened was on the bus drives or the van drives or the car drives going someplace. That was almost more impactful than all the things that happened once you got to the camp and you were there. It was the bus drive on the way there and the one on the way back, especially when a van or something broke down, right, Doug? Because it always did. So thank you. Can't wait to see you guys this weekend, and especially Alex, I'm looking forward to seeing you at 6'5".
Yeah.
So am I.
Yes. All right. God bless you.